Dolly Parton has always been more than a crown placed gently on the head of country music. She stands as a testament to resilience shaped by deprivation, softness forged in grief, and an honesty that never learned how to bend for comfort. When she wrote, "I Will Always Love You," it was not simply a goodbye wrapped in melody. It became one of the most enduring songs ever written, because it carried a truth so unguarded the world had no choice but to listen. Her wealth would later grow vast, hundreds of millions built not through spectacle, but through relentless creation and unwavering ownership. Thousands of songs, written by her hand and held under her control, continued to breathe long after stages emptied and lights dimmed. Dollywood rose not as an attraction, but as a living extension of her discipline and imagination, drawing millions into a dream shaped by work rather than illusion. Homes followed, not as symbols of comfort, but as markers of consequence. A Brentwood estate earned through exhaustion, a Nashville house echoing with laughter meant for children she never had, and a West Hollywood refuge where success felt heavier than applause. In her private stillness rested vintage cars, quiet witnesses to a life always moving forward. A 1974 Cadillac DeVille, a 1959 Jaguar XC150, a 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air, an early Ford Thunderbird. Each carried miles of persistence rather than display. And now, with Carl Dean gone and no children to carry her name, reflection sharpened into intention. She prepared her will with the same precision that shaped her career, deciding who would inherit not just her wealth, but the full measure of a life given completely to the world. If her music ever held you through a difficult moment, that connection was not accidental. It was deliberate. A woman giving her entire heart in every note and continuing to give without ever stopping. Some souls arrive already marked, as if life has claimed its share before childhood is allowed to begin. Dolly Parton was one of them. Long before contracts, cameras, or admiration ever learned her name, endurance was pressed into her bones in the Great Smoky Mountains. Born January 19th, 1946, in Sevier County, Tennessee, her first lullaby was wind grinding through pine and timber. Her cradle was a one-room cabin wedged between ridges. No electricity, no running water, only cold darkness and her mother's strained breathing. Her parents were so poor they paid the doctor who delivered her with a sack of cornmeal. Poverty was not a chapter. It was the climate. Winters arrived hard, slicing through cloth and skin until even the walls seemed to brace themselves. 12 children shared one blanket, pressed together not for comfort, but because warmth had to be earned. Summers offered no mercy either. River baths burned like glass. Bare feet split on stone. Smoke and damp wood clung to hair and skin. Her father's hands told the story his words could not. Cracked, calloused, darkened by endless labor to keep 13 plates from emptiness. Her mother moved like a hymn worn thin, sewing until her fingers numbed, singing softly as she cooked. By 6, Dolly was already carrying water, rocking babies, stirring beans over a wood stove until smoke stung her eyes. She owned no toys, only an early understanding that love demanded effort and faith revealed itself through endurance. Then came 1955, the year silence arrived and never fully left. Dolly was 9 when her baby brother lived only 4 days. Number: funeral, no marker. Just a small patch of earth behind the house. She stood watching the dirt settle, seeing something precious disappear without ceremony. Her mother sat motionless, hands folded like broken wings. Her father's steps slowed, beneath a weight no labor could lift. The child who once sang to fill quiet now faced a silence that would never answer back. She carried it forward. Much later, she would admit that some songs were the only way she knew how to speak to the ones she lost. School offered no refuge. One winter, Her mother stitched her coat from scraps. In the classroom, laughter cut sharper than the wind outside. To others, it looked like rags. To Dolly, it was love sewn into cloth. She walked home through snow with her head high, tears burning against the cold. Decades later, that wound would become Coat of Many Colors. Even after her mother's death, she could barely sing it, her voice faltering where memory still lived. Music. By 7, music had already become her shelter. She wrote before she could spell, turning hunger into melody, loneliness into lullaby, grief into something she could carry without breaking. She sang to stay warm. She sang to fill the hollow her brother left behind. She sang because stopping felt dangerous. Every bitter winter, every long walk to school, every scrap of fabric stitched by her mother became part of the instrument she carried inside. Long before rhinestones and applause, that voice was her only defense, born of hunger, sharpened by loss. Disciplined by necessity, that child never disappeared. Even now, beneath the admiration of millions, the same voice hums steady and unyielding. For Dolly Parton, music was never decoration, it was survival. It was how she endured and how she learned to give the world what pain could never take away. Comment, 79, or write Rip Dolly Parton to honor them. Asterisk, asterisk. No one standing in those early hills could have imagined the barefoot girl singing into Tennessee wind would one day face the brightest lights on earth. Back then, her audience was the land itself, trees that never judged, a creek that kept time, a faith she leaned on long before she allowed herself to dream. By 10, Dolly Parton carried a voice that could still a room without asking. In 1956, she began traveling with her uncle Bill Owens, chasing radio towers through darkness. Their car limped along empty roads, the gas needle hovering low, the trunk packed with notebooks and wax paper sandwiches. They slept where mercy allowed. Borrowed couches, church pews, sometimes the back seat of a tired car under frozen skies. Years later, she would remember it simply thrilling and frightening all at once. Cold mornings. Stars too close. A melody as the only warmth that stayed. Music. In 1964, she graduated and left without ceremony. No flowers, no applause. Just a dirt road at sunrise, a cardboard suitcase, a Greyhound ticket, and $20 folded thin in her pocket. As the bus pulled away, the mountains shrank into ghosts. Nashville shimmered from a distance. Up close, it burned cold, doors closed. Smiles softened into dismissal. At night, alone in a rented room, barely large enough to breathe, she sang quietly just to make sure she still existed. There were nights she sang so she wouldn't disappear. The only instruction she trusted was simple keep going. Then came 1965. What looked like rescue felt like a cage. Monument Records offered a contract, but only if she softened herself. Too country, too mountain, too much. Under studio lights, she sang perfectly while feeling borrowed, like wearing someone else's skin. When the record stalled, the phones went silent. By day, she played smoky bars. By night, she wrote by candlelight when the power was cut, lyrics. Scratched onto envelopes, hands cramping, stomach empty. Still she stayed. Sometimes she hummed just to hear something alive. In that ache, her true sound emerged in 1966. Put It Off Until Tomorrow, quietly climbed to #1, Nashville. Finally asked her name. She answered the following year with, "Hello, I'm Dolly." Not an introduction, but a declaration. By 1973, she wrote a goodbye not to success, but to confinement. I will always love you, not a breakup, but a release shaped like grace. When the final note faded, the room fell silent. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, she breathed once and listened for the same girl who once sang into the mountains just to survive. She hadn't lost her. She had carried her all the way there, music, Dolly Parton's rise was never graceful. It was survival fought beneath lights so unforgiving they stripped away the edges of who she was allowed to be. By 1970, she stood at the center of the Porter Wagoner show, her voice pouring into millions of homes each week. On camera, she glowed. Offstage, the air tightened. Each honest lyric chilled the room. Truth became friction. The industry preferred her smaller, sweeter, grateful. Porter Wagoner, mentor and gatekeeper, could not see that the girl he'd found had outgrown the frame built around her. She loved him, she honored him. But affection could not soften walls closing in. By 1974, the choice she feared arrived without mercy. She would leave the show and the man who helped build her name. It wasn't defiance, it was preservation. The goodbye came as a song, I Will Always Love You, restraint stitched to ache. The song raced to #1, generating royalties. That would echo for decades. Applause followed. Inside something mourned. Success born from separation often feels less like victory than loss. When the curtain fell, she stood alone, makeup smudged, breath unsteady, repeating the only truth she trusted: you did the right thing, music. Even before that farewell, her power had already spoken. Jolene arrived like a hush that cut. Through noise spare, human, unshielded. It sold millions and cemented her as a songwriter of rare precision. Nashville kept shrinking her, a novelty, a duet girl, too pretty to be serious, while her catalog quietly expanded. By day, she smiled. On cue. By night, she wrote in motel rooms, thick with fatigue, coffee cold, ink smeared, hands aching. Writing was how she kept breathing. Some nights she slept upright, guitar pressed to her chest, strings marking her skin as proof she endured another day. Asterisk, asterisk. The mid-70s pushed her body past comfort into consequence. Hundreds of shows a year, non-stop radio promos, flights stacked to dawn, her voice roughened, fingers blistered, corsets cut. She learned to turn pain into polish. There were evenings. She left the stage and collapsed backstage, sequins scattering across tile. She laughed it off. When the lights went dark, her body told the truth. She refused to surrender her story. When told to rest, she wrote. When urged to soften, she pressed deeper. She would not be shaped into a formula, music. In 1977, here. You Come Again shattered boundaries, climbing to #1 on the country chart and into the top tier of pop. Critics cried betrayal. She answered quietly she hadn't left country, she carried it forward. Then came 1980, 9 to 5, written a sleepless stretch on a film set, exploded across radio, film, and culture. The world cheered as her schedule tightened. Film shoots, studio nights, red carpets, flights without breath. Some nights she met her reflection and didn't recognize her. The smile remained. Beneath it, a woman holding together a growing empire with resolve and faith. By the late 80s. As trends shifted, she didn't chase, she stayed, proving she could evolve without erasing herself. By decade's end, she hadn't just reached the peak. She had changed the terrain. Thousands of songs written, complete ownership of her publishing, a catalog that would one day be valued in the hundreds of millions. Her voice became a constant, her pen a living asset forged from endurance and grace music. Even at the height of fame, when applause rolled like an endless sea, silence always found her. Between arenas and tour buses cutting through sleeping towns, memories returned. Locust. Ridge, 1955, a weathered cabin where life and loss once shared the same thin air. Her baby brother's short breath. The grief never explained, only absorbed. As admiration grew vast, that wound never faded. It changed shape, it lived beneath her music. When she sang, I Will Always Love You, the tenderness did not come. from contracts or careers. It rose from mountain soil and a grief that never learned language. Each phrase carried an echo of a lullaby never finished. Music. She once admitted she'd been singing to the ones she lost longer than she'd been singing to the world. That unresolved loss sharpened her honesty and softened her strength. Long after trophies gleamed, her truest triumph was refusing to let grief turn her bitter. Each lyric became an offering, each melody an act of return. Love and loss woven from the same cloth, one tearing, one mending. The courage to let a broken heart keep singing quietly, beautifully, without turning away. Comment 79 or write Rip Dolly Parton to honor them. Asterisk, asterisk. If Dolly Parton's music has a heartbeat, its first and truest rhythm belonged to her mother, Avy Lee Parton. She was more than the woman who gave Dolly life. She was the quiet force that taught her how to endure. Before stages and spotlights, Avy Lee was the mountain song, turning empty cupboards into grace and worn hands into hymns. She stitched faith into survival so thoroughly it became instinct. When her mother died in 2003, something essential inside Dolly slowed. The world noticed nothing, no canceled shows, no softened smile. But beneath the shine, a heavy stillness settled. Dolly later said it felt like the light inside her dimmed. She kept moving because that was the lesson she'd been raised with. Still, she admitted that for a long while she felt as if she were walking through life without fully touching it. Music. Avy Lee had worked miracles with scraps, her hands. Sewed the coat of many colors patch by patch, prayer by prayer, turning childhood humiliation into dignity. The song became a triumph. But after her mother was gone, it became something else entirely. Dolly once said she tried to sing it and fell apart. It stopped being a song and became her mama's hands, her voice, her love. Some nights she stood before thousands, lights blazing, smiles steady, while inside she was still that little girl listening for a voice that would never answer. Grief followed the rules of her upbringing. It was carried, not announced. Friends recalled finding her alone backstage, the original coat folded in her lap, fingers tracing its seams like a map back home. Once it kept the cold out, now it kept her heart from hardening. Over time, sorrow softened to reverence. She spoke of her mother not with tears, but with awe. Her mama lived in every good thing she'd ever done. She still dreamed of her, and in those dreams, her mother wasn't gone. She was waiting. When Dolly returned to Coat of Many Colors years later, it sounded changed. To the crowd, it was hope. To her, it was communion, each note a prayer, each word a memory. The greatest inheritance she ever received was not applause or gold, but a mother's love that taught her kindness could be strength. Comment or write by Avy Lee Parton. To honor them, among all of Dolly Parton's siblings, Floyd Parton was never simply family. He was the one who heard the same silence she heard, the quiet before a melody dared to exist. Long before contracts or applause, they sat shoulder to shoulder in Locust Ridge when the world was no wider than a front porch. A battered guitar rested between them. Scraps of paper held half-born lines. They traded verses until the song decided where it belonged. They weren't only writing. They were remembering. Brother and sister bound by the same hunger, the same winters, the same faith learned early and tested often music. Songs like Rockin' Years, which later reached #1 in 1991, didn't come from ambition. They came from recognition. Floyd's name appeared quietly in liner notes, easy to miss. But to Dolly, he was everywhere in her phrasing, her timing, the breath she trusted before a pause. He was the harmony that never asked to be seen. Then in December 2018, that harmony broke. Floyd Parton died at 61, and something inside Dolly slipped off beat in a way no one else could repair. This loss didn't announce itself. It folded inward. He knew what she meant before she ever had to explain it. When he was gone, that private language vanished with him. There were no grand tributes, just a quiet family goodbye. In a small chapel in the Tennessee hills, they sang together one final time. No polish, just voices trembling under memory. Those who were there said it didn't feel like a song. It felt like something being released. Afterward, Dolly returned to the world as she always had, working, writing, smiling for cameras. But something had shifted. The light remained, but softer. Floyd had been her bridge back home. Losing him felt like losing the map. Late at night, she would sit with her guitar, fingers resting on strings they once shared, waiting for a line that never arrived. Some songs don't want to be finished. And yet, even in silence, he stayed. In the brief pauses on stage, her gaze, sometimes lifted as if listening for something only she could hear, comment 61, or write Rip Floyd Parton to honor them. Some heartbreaks are too heavy for melody. For Dolly Parton, the loss of her niece Tever was that kind of wound, 36 years old, an age meant for second chances. Her light went out far from stages and applause, in a silence no spotlight could reach. The ending was reduced to a single word, but those who loved her knew it was the final chapter of a longer fight. Custody battles, loneliness, a heart too open for the weight it carried. Dolly saw the storm forming and did not turn away. She paid for rehab herself, not for recognition, but because love still believes there might be another verse. She wanted her to have one more chance. It didn't come. The music stopped quietly, no public mourning, just a small private farewell. A woman who had lifted millions sat motionless, hands trembling, eyes fixed on a door that never opened. In the months that followed, the loss traveled with her into studios, down empty highways, into pauses that grew longer between words. The question followed her: how could a woman who had given so much still fail to save one life she loved? Over time, a truth carved itself clear. Even the strongest love cannot always pull someone back from the edge. Love's truest form is sometimes found not in saving, but in staying. Comment 36 or write Rip Tever to honor them. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. There are dreams so intimate that when life reaches in and takes them away, it doesn't shatter you. It hollows you. For Dolly Parton, that dream was motherhood. Not a headline, not a legacy, just a quiet future she guarded carefully for years. When she married Carl Dean in 1966, her thoughts did not race toward stages or applause. They settled on ordinary miracles. A warm kitchen heavy with the smell of biscuits, small shoes by the door, a soft voice drifting down the hallway at night. She imagined a child calling her mama. That vision followed her everywhere onto tour. Buses, into studios, folded gently between lyric sheets, packed beside gowns and guitars. Music. Then in 1982, at 36, waiting turned brutal. Years of pain and silent endurance led to a truth that could not be softened. Endometriosis had already taken more than anyone could see. Surgery did not arrive as a choice. It arrived as an ending. Under harsh hospital lights, the battle inside, her body was brought to a cold conclusion. When the doctors left and the room fell still, Dolly lay there with her hands over her stomach, understanding with terrifying clarity that she was not just losing the ability to have a child. She was burying a future she had been carrying since girlhood. There was no ceremony for that goodbye, no words strong enough to hold it, only the awareness that something sacred had been cut away and would never return. She walked out of the hospital altered. The scars were small. The damage was vast. Medicine could close the wound, but it could not touch the silence that followed her home. It trailed her through hallways, settled into empty rooms, lingered, where lullabies should have lived. From that day on, the world saw the same smile. Inside, something irreplaceable was gone. No song could immediately fill it. There were no announcements, just the low hum of appliances in an empty kitchen. A clock that sounded louder after dark. The house felt alert, listening. No small arms, no footsteps. Only quiet, the kind that moves with you from room to room. Music. For a woman who had always turned hardship into song, this became the one melody she could not finish. She later said she didn't know how to sing that kind of loss, but she refused to let it turn inward. The love meant for one child had nowhere to land, so it overflowed into her siblings' children, into young dreamers searching for someone to believe in them. By 1995, that unspent devotion became the imagination library, books traveling into small hands across the world. It wasn't replacement, it was redirection. A mother's heart learning how to give without possession. Still, the ache never left. It surfaced quietly in storefront windows, in the sight of a woman lifting a child onto her hip, in a lullaby drifting from a passing car. She spoke of it rarely, never with resentment. Some things, she said, are meant to grow differently. At the height of her fame, when her name glittered brighter than rhinestones, Dolly Parton appeared untouchable. But beneath the sequins, her body had already begun to count differently. Exhaustion hardened into something merciless. Years of nonstop touring and sleepless nights stripped her strength away. Then came the word that changed everything: endometriosis. Her own body became hostile ground. Still, she walked on stage night after night, voice rising through pain, telling herself to keep going because stopping felt more dangerous. Music. By 1982, her body surrendered. Surgery saved her life and erased her future in the same motion. She woke to a silence applause could not fill. There was no space to grieve publicly, so she learned to smile instead. The joy drained, the music dimmed. She stopped writing, stopped performing. She later called it emptiness, a gray place where joy used to live. Friends saw the change before she named it. The laughter dulled, the spark thinned. She withdrew while the world remained unaware of how close she came to disappearing from herself. Then came a moment, so small it nearly went unnoticed, alone in her home, swallowed by quiet. She felt herself sinking, and then she felt it at her feet. Her little dog Popeye looking up at her, asking for nothing except that she stay. That simple need broke something open. She collapsed, realizing she still wanted to live. The climb back was slow, uneven. She sought help, leaned into faith, began writing again, not for charts, but for survival. The songs that returned carried a different light, earned through pain. She would later say those were the most humbling years of her life. They stripped away illusion and left something steadier behind. The understanding that strength is not the absence of pain, but the courage to rise and sing anyway. Music. Comment 79 or write "Rip Dolly Parton" to honor them. **4. Nearly 6 decades, Carl Dean was the one place Dolly Parton could set her name down and breathe. Not as a legend, not as a constellation of rhinestones and records, simply as his Dolly. To the world she shimmered under spotlights. To him, she was the woman moving quietly through the house at dawn, barefoot on cool floors, humming while the coffee darkened the room. He never asked her to shine, never needed her to explain herself. He didn't call her a star. He called her baby. In a life spent giving pieces of herself to millions, Carl was the one person who asked for nothing but her presence. He chose the shadows so she could rest in the light. For almost 60 years, he was her private ground, the only place where love did not need to be earned or performed. Music. Then, in 2025, that ground went silent. At 82, Carl Dean slipped away quietly inside their Nashville home. No cameras, no applause. just a stillness so heavy it felt denser than grief itself. Those closest to her said she didn't simply lose her husband. She lost the last place where she had ever existed before the world claimed her. In the days that followed, she withdrew. Curtains stayed drawn. Calls went unanswered. Music failed her. She would lift her guitar, brush a string, and feel the sound thin before it could live. It felt as if the songs knew he was gone. When it came time to say goodbye, she refused spectacle. She shaped the farewell herself. Inside a small cedar chapel on their land, she filled the space with wildflowers he loved. Along the walls hung photographs no magazine had ever seen: mud on boots, flannel mornings, hands intertwined on a porch. Swing. When she stood to speak, she did not face the room. Her eyes stayed on the casket. She thanked him not for the years, but for the shelter. Then she unfolded a letter he had written long ago, marked simply, "After I'm gone." Her hands trembled as she read his words. By the final line, her voice broke. The silence that followed felt holy. She reached for the guitar he'd bought her before her first hit and played a song meant for no audience at all. When the last note faded, she stepped back into the quiet that now belonged to her music. In the weeks that followed, loneliness settled into her days. Each morning, she set 2 cups on the table before stopping, breath catching, remembering there was only one. The house breathed differently without him. Some nights she swore she heard footsteps, the brush of a hand near the porch swing. She still whispered goodnight into the dark, not from habit, but because love that deep does not vanish. Lately, even her body has begun to echo that loss, her movement slower, her voice softer, doctors urging stillness. In the quiet rooms they built together, memory and pain share the same air. She once said she didn't fear death, only leaving songs unfinished. Perhaps that is the final truth of her life. After giving the world everything, she now carries one last verse shaped from silence. At 79, Dolly Parton stands on a summit so radiant it convinces the world nothing is missing. Her name is sealed into music history. Her songs have lived inside generations. Her fortune, built on ownership rather than spectacle, reaches into the hundreds of millions. Thousands of songs continue to generate royalties decade after decade. Dollywood stands as more than entertainment, an ecosystem sustaining an entire region, ad publishing, production, land, and legacy, and the picture becomes almost unreal. Yet inside the home she shared with Carl for nearly 60 years, the loudest presence is what no longer answers. One rocking chair moves with the breeze, the other never does. His boots wait by the door. His newspaper stays folded where it will never worm again. Most mornings now lead her to Carl's chapel. She takes the first pew, closes her eyes, and hums melodies meant for him alone. Some days they lift her into a smile. Some days her eyes shine. She does not let the tears stay long. She says he never liked seeing her sad. She has no children of her own, yet her legacy has already been decided. Her wealth is structured to circulate toward literacy, education, healthcare, and the Appalachian communities that shaped her. The Imagination Library has delivered hundreds of millions of books worldwide. Nothing she built was meant to sit idle. It was meant to move. She still writes, still oversees what she built, still answers letters from strangers who say her songs kept them alive, but she no longer counts in numbers. Time speaks more clearly through her body now. Between appointments and quiet afternoons, she drifts into her private studio and writes again, not for charts or legacy, but because writing is how she stays. The melodies sound like memories, like prayers. The world may hear fewer songs, but somewhere inside the quiet, the music continues, unfinished and still giving music. In the end, Dolly Parton's life cannot be reduced to wealth or acclaim. What remains is discipline. the discipline to build without erasing herself, to give without vanishing, to let success expand outward while protecting what mattered most within. Beneath the empire sits a quieter truth. Her greatest asset was restraint, the restraint to protect a private life, to step away from aberration and return to silence. That restraint carried a cost: loneliness, irreversible loss, long seasons of stillness. But it preserved something, rare self that did not fracture under scale. When the applause thins and the lights soften, what endures is not the fortune or the fame, but the courage to live truthfully, to love fully, and to keep giving even when the song grows quiet. Dolly Parton's life asks a question deeper than success. Not how much can be accumulated, but what kind of life can remain intact because of it. Comment 79 or Write Brick Dolly Parton to honor them. Silence has a different weight when it is chosen rather than forced. In the later chapters of Dolly Parton's life, quiet no longer feels like an enemy she must outrun. It has become a companion she understands. Mornings arrive gently now. Light creeps across familiar walls. She rises not from urgency, but from memory. The body remembers decades of discipline, even when the calendar suggests rest. She moves through rooms shaped by shared years, each step echoing with what once answered back. This is not emptiness. It is presence transformed. Her voice, though softer, still carries intention. When she speaks, it is with the careful economy of someone who's already said everything loudly enough. She understands that legacy is not built at the end, but protected there. Contracts signed long ago still move quietly through the world. Songs earning not just money, but time for children to read, for families to stay, for communities to hold together. She built systems that do not require her constant presence, only her original care. That may be her most deliberate creation of all. There are afternoons when she sits alone with a guitar, not to perform, not to finish anything, but to listen. Fingers rest on strings without urgency. A chord hums and fades, another follows. These are not songs meant for release. They are conversations with herself, with Carl, with the girl who once sang into mountain air just to survive. Some melodies stop halfway, others wonder. She lets them. Not everything needs an ending. Those closest to her notice the difference. The generosity remains, but it has slowed into something more precise. She gives where it matters most. She laughs when she wants to. She rests when her body asks. Fame no longer interrupts her inner life. It waits politely outside. The world still reaches for her, still projects permanence onto her smile. She understands the illusion without resenting it. She has lived long enough to know that being admired is not the same as being held. When people speak of her fortune, they speak in numbers. When she thinks of her wealth, she thinks in outcomes. A child opening, a book, a worker staying employed, a town still breathing because something rooted there refused to leave. She never believed success should hover above the ground that raised it. She anchored hers deliberately, again and again, until it became infrastructure rather than ornament. Music, in private moments, grief still arrives unannounced. It does not knock. It simply sits beside her. She has learned not to push it away. Loss, after all, has been one of her longest companions. She knows its shape. She knows its patience. She also knows it does not get the final word. Music taught her that. Love taught her that. Endurance taught her that. There are no grand speeches left to give. No final performance waiting in the wings. What remains is stewardship of stories, of songs, of silence. She has entrusted the future with what she could carry and accepted that some things must now carry themselves. That acceptance is not resignation. It is mastery. When history speaks her name, it will list achievements, records, wealth, influence. But beneath all of it, the quieter truth will remain. A woman who learned early that survival was not guaranteed, who turned scarcity into discipline, grief into honesty, and success into responsibility, who gave without erasing herself, who loved without demanding permanence, who understood that the most powerful thing a life can leave behind is not noise, but continuity. Dolly Parton does not stand at the end of her story waiting for applause. She stands within it, steady, attentive, allowing it to move forward without her constante. And somewhere beyond stages and spotlights, beyond numbers and monuments, her voice still hums. Not loudly, not for anyone else. Just enough to say she is still here. Comment 79 or write Rip Dolly Parton to honor them. Asterisk time continues its quiet work, and Dolly Parton allows it. She has learned that not every chapter demands expansion. Some ask only to be held with care. In these days, she speaks often of gratitude, not as performance, but as practice. Gratitude for mornings that arrive without urgency, for evenings that close gently, for the simple mercy of still being able to choose where her attention rests. Music. She knows how easily a life can be consumed by its own legend. She guarded against that early, building walls not to keep people out, but to keep herself intact. That discipline remains. She limits the noise. She chooses fewer rooms. She listens more than she speaks. In doing so, she keeps faith with the child she once was, the one who learned early that survival depended on attention, on noticing what mattered before it slipped away. Visitors still come, family still gathers, laughter still finds its way through the halls. But when the house empties again, she does not rush to fill it. She lets quiet settle. She has learned that silence is not absence. It is a language, one she understands fluently now. In that language, Carl is still present. Her parents still hum. Her brother's harmony still waits just beyond the next breath. She continues to oversee what she built, not from ambition, but from responsibility. Ownership was never about control for her. It was about protection, making sure the work could not be taken from the people it was meant to serve, making sure the story stayed honest, making sure the giving did not stop. When the spotlight dimmed, that instinct guides her still. When asked what she wants remembered, she does not list achievements. She speaks instead of kindness, of doing good where you can, of leaving a place better than you found it. These are not slogans to her. They are instructions learned the hard way, tested across decades, proven through loss and endurance. She followed them long before anyone was watching. As the world looks ahead, measuring futures and legacies, Dolly Parton remains grounded in something simpler. She trusts what she planted will grow. She trusts what she loved will last. She trusts that music, once released with honesty, knows how to find its way where it is needed. That trust is not naive. It is earned, and so her story does not close with a curtain call. It softens instead, like a final chord allowed to ring until it fades naturally into air. No urgency, no demand, just resonance. A life that learned how to give without depletion. A voice that learned how to endure without hardening. A woman who understood that the truest measure of success is not how loudly you are remembered, but how gently you continue to be felt. Comment 79 or a Rip Dolly Parton to honor them. Asterisk as the years continue to gather quietly behind her. Dolly Parton carries them without display. She has never been interested in pretending time does not exist. She respects it too much for that. Time shaped her hands, steadied her voice, softened her urgency. It taught her which battles mattered and which silences deserved protection. In this season, she does not chase meaning. She recognizes it when it arrives and lets it stay. Music, she still believes in work, not as punishment, but as purpose. Writing remains the place where her thoughts line up and make sense. Some days she writes a full song. Other days, only a line, sometimes just a phrase she tucks away, knowing it may never return. That is enough. Creation no longer needs an audience to justify itself. It only needs honesty. That was always the rule. Her relationship with the world has changed, but it has not thinned. Letters still arrive. Stories still reach her. People still tell her that a song carried them through grief, through poverty, through loneliness they never thought would lift. She listens to those stories carefully. She never rushes them. She understands what it costs to speak from that place. She has lived there herself. In public moments, she remains gracious, warm, unmistakably herself. In private, she allows complexity. Some days are light, some are heavy. She does not try to equalize them. She lets each day be what it is. That permission is something she earned slowly, through years of giving before learning how to rest. There is no grand conclusion waiting for her story. No final achievement left to secure. What remains is continuity. Systems she built still function. Songs she wrote still travel. Love she invested still circulates. That is the kind of legacy that does not announce itself. It simply works. When the house is quiet at night, she sometimes sits without turning on the lights. She listens to the sounds that remain. The settling of wood, the breath of air through open space. These are not reminders of loss to her anymore. They are confirmations. Proof that life continues to move, even when it slows. She once said she never set out to be extraordinary. She only wanted to do her best with what she was given. Looking back, that may be the most accurate summary of her life. She took what was small, what was painful, what was overlooked, and treated it with care. Over time, that care compounded into something vast. If the world feels steadier because she passed through it, that is not an accident. It is the result of thousands of deliberate choices made quietly, consistently, and without demand for recognition. That kind of impact does not fade quickly. It settles in. Dolly Parton's life does not end in silence. It resolves into it. A silence full of memory, intention, and ongoing effect. A silence that knows what it has done and does not need to explain itself further. And within that stillness, the music remains, not performing, not proving, just existing, as it always has, as part of her, and now part of the world. Comment 79 or write Rip Dolly Parton to honor them.